Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest here with us today on the I Drink from Skulls podcast. We have a man that knows all of my deep and dark secrets. He's the killer from Carolee, the legend from the liquor industry. He's a family man, father, founder, and CEO. My dad, Mr. Jeff Smith. Welcome to the I Drink from Skulls podcast.
Wow, Matthew, thank you. What a wonderful introduction.
You like that intro?
I loved it. That was special, but I don't know if I deserve it, but I'll take it anyway.
You're a killer. And once people get to hear what you've done and who you are, I'm sure they will agree.
Let's go. I drink from skulls. Drink from the skulls of my enemies.
So just on that note, Dad, who the hell is Jeff Smith?
Well, firstly, I'm your dad and Jodie's dad, and Leanne's husband. But I was born in the late 50s, so I'm a baby boomer in Melbourne. I come from a really close family. My mother, her whole life was about her family and her children, and she instilled those sort of things into to all our kids. And my father was a civil engineer, so we travelled around Australia a lot. We probably spent 2 years in any town or city, and I did that from grade 1 right through to when I ended up at St Edmunds in grade 11 and finished my schooling in Ipswich, doing a stint in North Queensland at a great boarding school called Mount Carmel College. For a lot of people, going to new schools and having to, make new friends, and it makes for tough growing up. But I learned a lot from it because I met new people. I learned about new places, and I think it's better than sitting in one spot for 40 years. Just moving around and learning about this great country.
Yeah, nice. So you've been around the block a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I've been around the block a lot, Matty. You know that. When I left school, I studied accounting and administration at QUT. I only ever had 3 jobs. The first one was at a transport company called W. Quince & Co., sort of a junior clerk there, and I was studying at QUT, and I moved to a company called Dorf Industries, who are a major manufacturer of plumbing products. Most people would have heard of Dorf Industries, and they were a great company, and I was with them for 6 or 7 years before I moved into the wine industry, a company called Samuel Smith and Son Yalumba Wines, where I spent the next nearly 30 years. An amazing family-owned business, the biggest family-owned winery in Australia. The Samuel Smith and Son was Yalumba, plus lots of other brands, agency brands, beer and whiskey, but mostly wine, and very, very prominent in imported wines. And a great company to work for, a family that made you part of their family, and they taught me so much in life and in business, and they were great people to work for, and that's why it was hard to leave them. That's why I stayed there so long.
I love that. You mentioned there's something there that I want to dig into a little bit more. You got your base doing accounting, numbers, and sort of bucking the trend by, most accountants, they might stereotypically be a little bit boring, wear glasses, all that sort of jazz. But you became the state manager of what ended up being a very dominant and powerful and successful wine company, liquor company. So I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into that. You're only, was it 26 or 28 at that stage where you became the state manager?
Yeah, I was, I think I was 26 when I first went to work for Samuel Smith and Son Yalumba Wines.
Gotcha.
And I went there as an accountant, administration manager, and I wasn't a trainee accountant at Dorf, and I didn't like accounting. So the general manager of that business, he realised that, and he realised that I wanted to get out and sell, and I just had this itch that had to be scratched. I wanted to sell, and I didn't want to sit and count. So he realised that, and we spoke a lot. He was a great guy, and so I went out as a sales rep. I did Toowoomba, Ipswich for Dorf Industries, and there were some great. So I did stores like Mad Berries and Mitre 10, and sold tapware. And I was in my early 20s, and I did fairly well. I ended up with a promotion to the assistant sales manager, and I just had the bug, and I loved it. And I didn't want to go back to accounting, but the guy who was the accountant at Dorf Industries moved over to Yalumba about 12 months before I did, and he rang me one day and said, "You've got to come and join this company. Come over as an because I'm moving to South Australia." And he said, "There'll be an opportunity here for you." And they're just a great business and great people, and just come in over as the accountant and see what happens. Well, you know, he was pretty right. He saw the future because within 2 years, the state manager of the business in Queensland made a misstep. That's all I want to say about that. But the boss came up. Um, he sat us around the boardroom table. There was two sales managers who'd been there for almost 10 years each. I'd been there 18 months as an administration manager, and he had some keys in his hands, and he said, "Okay, Kevin's gone. We need to move on." He flicked the keys across the table. They landed in front of me, and he said, "Smithy's the new boss." And these guys they went almost purple with rage because I'd only been there 10
Yeah.
minutes, and they knew the industry. I didn't know much about it. I was a bean counter. Anyway, it's sorta that gave me a lot of inspiration as I moved on to make sure that I was successful so that those guys, they said a lot of stuff about me that there was no way a young accountant could do or lead them and do the job that they did, and I proved them wrong, I think. Well, I think I did. I'm sure I did.
Yeah. You shared some pretty amazing nuggets there. We won't go too deeply into why the person before you got booted out, but what I do want to focus on was that there was a misstep there. Was that the first time you saw, like, we can give the viewers a bit of juice, a bit of goss, a little bit here, but is that where you sort of sensed the importance of culture? Long story short, there was something going on and the culture had gone bad, toxic, if you will, and that's your introduction to it.
Yeah. So that had done this, we're up here and everyone else is down there. His wife at functions, everything about them was, they weren't inclusive to people. It was us and them. And
Got you.
I learned a lot from that. You can do much better by leading people with you, including them, letting them make decisions. And that's what we based the whole genesis of our business around. So anyway, that inspired me to do it a different way. And so I wanted my staff to be part of my team. I was just mad about selling. I wanted to sell. I wanted to grow the company by selling. What could I do to make the brands bigger? So I put some pretty good deals together. I went out and I met the biggest 5 players in the state, who in those days, Coles and Woolworths weren't around, so they were independent hoteliers, and they were good blokes. And, a few lunches here, a few games of golf there, and some good deals, and our business started to rock along a bit. And I came up with a concept that, ended up being quite successful, and that was we put a deal together for a family business that had 4 or 5 pubs that had bought X number of cartons off us one year, and we offered them an overseas trip with us, fully funded, and if they purchased X number of cartons the next year. So it gave us 10 to 15% growth year on year. And we did that with the top sort of 10 or 15 retailers in the state. And then we picked out some of the best restaurants and included them and used the same sort of concept. We made sure the trips were so good that everyone wanted to go on
Yeah.
them. It was just everyone talked about it when they came back. They said how good it was and how well they were looked after. We didn't fly up the front of the plane and treat them like superstars, but when we got them there, so the first one we did was to New Zealand. Went to a rugby test. And that was great. That was 1988, and the next one we did, I think we did to South Australia, really small sort of stuff. And then I decided, bugger this, we'll do something a little bit bigger, and we did San Francisco,
Oh, wow.
and that sort of set the pace for the next 10 years. And, as the years went on, we did Rio de Janeiro and Greek islands. Reality, they were sort of paying for the trip because they were buying more and more. They had to buy more and more every year. And it was case related. They funded it and they became a bit of a family. Older publicans will tell you that went on our trips that they became mates and they shared a bond. And the Queensland liquor industry the publicans back in the old days they were all great mates. They weren't competitors, they were great mates.
Yeah,
And we were part of that. We were part of bringing them together, and, lots of people copied us, and as time went on, trips became ho-hum, but we did it. We were the first ones to do it, and we did it well, and we rewarded people for supporting us.
I love that. I've done a lot of study and research on the principles of influence and persuasion and things like that. And what you've described there is one of the key things is like unity. You've created a family, you've created an environment that people actively wanted to be a part of, a real us and them thing that was so smart in the way that you've structured it because they had to buy your stuff to get in the trip and people were making sure that they were on that trip. But in within those trips, you were building really strong relationships. And I want to sort of touch on that a little bit further because like you started as a 28-year-old, very fresh to the industry. Fast forward 30 years, you'd build a business and a culture that had become one of the most dominant players in the game. Do you put that down to some of the things you mentioned there, building relationships? Like these are things that people could do in any industry. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was part of it. The other thing was that we worked for a company. Robert Hill Smith had an ethos that you over deliver. So what he put in the bottle was always, and what he sold it for was always worth a bit more. He never left you wanting and saying, "I paid $5 too much for that bottle of wine." It's not a $20 bottle of wine. He would give you a $20 bottle of wine for $15, and that there's a great lesson in that. So whenever people bought wines from Yalumba and most of the other brands that Yalumba or Samuel Smith and Son do, they over-delivered, and they had a reputation for that, I think that sort of follows through to most things in life. If you give people a good product at a good price, they'll come back and support you.
100%. That's
Yeah.
a timeless, ageless value add there that if you
It
get that right.
it's pretty
Yeah.
simple. It's pretty
Yeah.
simple.
I love that.
Yep,
You
yep.
mentioned something before that I want to dig a little bit deeper in, and that's sort of building a culture. Because I saw it firsthand growing up. You'd throw me a Guernsey and I'd do a few deliveries here and there and training and stuff like that. But I got to see firsthand the culture that you'd built. And you did extremely well by identifying what we would call them referral partners. They became your clients, your customers, where you built key relationships with the right people, the decision makers, the stakeholders that can really drive you forward. But you couldn't just if that's all you did, it would run into a heat because the team wouldn't be there to back it up and support it. And I saw you get the culture dialed in. Could you share some things about how you built culture and how you got people to buy into what you were doing?
Well, I mean, the most important thing is to make the right selection when, you're employing someone, and make sure it's someone that you think can fit that culture and that wants to be a team player and not someone that goes off and does their own shit.
Yeah,
And so we did that. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you get that wrong. That just happens. But for most of the time, we got it pretty right, and we had, it's pretty simple. You work better as a team than you do as a group of individuals, and all the structure of our deals and our incentives and everything were based around the team winning,
yeah,
not just the individual. We got the team together, and we were we had a reputation that we played hard, but we bloody worked hard as well. And we had a reputation for that as well. So, back in the 80s, 90s, or, late 80s, 90s, 2000s, we were a company that everyone wanted to work for in the industry. When, anyone left another business, they'd ring, try and put their name down to see if we had anything. And everyone wanted to work for us because we had this great community, family orientated culture that people were inclusive. So we gave them, yeah, and you give people, give them the tools to do their job and let them go and do it. And if they don't do it, then you need to do something about it. But you've got to give them the opportunity to do
yeah.
it, and uh, and don't micromanage them. If you need to micromanage someone, they shouldn't be in your business.
Great share. Just want to dig a little bit deeper there because that was gold, and because I know a little bit more about this. But from a financial point of view, these people could go and work for the biggest companies. They could go and get bigger money. But like you said, they'd put their name down with you. Is that kind of what you're putting that down to?
We wanted people to hop out of bed and go, "Wow, I want to go and sell some wine for Samuel Smith and Son," and not dread getting out of bed and just doing it as a job.
Yeah.
And I think we did that. Our incentives were pretty good. We didn't pay as much as some of the bigger companies, but if you did well, you you were remunerated well. It's like, I guess, in certain footy teams that people want to play for
Yeah.
and will play for less money, because they want to win a premiership. And, back in the 90s, we were winning premierships.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So you really instilled a purpose that everyone was buying into, and that's amazing. Want to focus the days since Samuel Smith and Son Yolumba Wines. You retired from that business. It's the liquor industry. It's a young man's game. Not that you weren't keeping up with it, but you sort of sensed it was time to move on and do something different. And you started
I did.
a.
And
Tell us a little bit about what you did next.
well, I was getting close to 55, and I sort of looked ahead and went, well, I can't do the travel anymore. There's a lot of travel, a lot of entertainment, as you know.
Yeah.
I was on the road a lot, I was in South Australia 3 or 4 times a year. I was in North Queensland a couple of times a year, and I was on the road with my staff, with reps and stuff. You weren't if you weren't entertaining, you were traveling to, marketing meetings or whatever. And I just felt I'd done it enough. I was a bit exhausted, so at 55, we decided, Leanne and I decided that I'd retire from Yalumba, and we bought a little business, a meat retail business like a mobile butcher business that goes to produce markets. So we bought one truck in 2010, another one in 2011. So they were meant to be just something to do in retirement, give us something to do. Add a little bit of cash flow, then we added another one, and it ended up being, quite a decent sort of business.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've applied the same principles in that business as Robert Hill Smith and John Ord and people like that taught me in the wine business. And that's over-deliver and service the shit out of them,
Yeah.
and that's what we do.
I love that.
We've got that spot where the price and the quality give great quality, for a reasonable price. And I think we're there. We've it took us years to get our portfolio of products, to where we wanted them, and we're there. Well, have been for quite some time. But as you know, we started off part of a franchise, and they didn't have those values.
Yeah.
As far as quality goes, they started to slip a bit, so we went out on our own because your name's on the till. And if you're not delivering the quality, and then it's you that people look at. So we went, well, if people are going to look at us for not delivering the right product, then we need to live. We need to do something about it. So we did, and we built a great portfolio of products that we're really proud of, and that, people come to. We're at 6 produce markets around Brisbane. Great little business. We really enjoy it. It's only on the weekends, but fair bit of work during the week getting it all ready. As I said, the same values that work in the wine industry, work in the meat industry, work in any industry. Service people well and deliver good product at a reasonable price, and you'll be successful.
And I want to dig in there. You live and die by the core values, and you just shared them. But how big of a just for perspective for people, how big of a decision was it for you you had to leave the system, the franchise, they were violating the core values in your eyes, and we know what really happened there, but it was a big move to make, but you had to do it. So sort of I want people to get some value out of that. How did you knew you had to do it. How did you make that call?
Well, yeah, it was a tough one actually
Yeah.
because, we weren't very experienced we weren't experienced at all in meat, and we relied on them to do the selection with full range of beef and pork and chicken, and they bought it all and sold it to you and told you to put a certain margin on it and then resell it, and you just relied on them. We didn't know a whole lot about it, so we had to learn pretty
Yeah.
quickly, and but we knew we couldn't keep and it's pretty simple. If you give someone something that's not up to standard and you're charging them a not an exorbitant price, but a fair sort of a price, they don't come back
No.
to you. There's lots of other options, so lots of other people around that sell the same stuff you do. So you've got to give them a good experience and you've got to give them good value. So we went out and worked our butts off on that was when we moved from there, we really worked hard to and we had to build relationships. We got 9 great suppliers now and farmers and in the poultry, beef, lamb and pork industries that look after us, and they share the same values we do, and so it makes for a successful business if you deliver to your customers a good product at a good price.
I think it's a big takeaway there for anyone that's watching along. Maybe they didn't realize at the time, but they're in business with the person that does not align to their core values for any number of reasons, but particularly, long story short, if they're not delivering on what they say and it's just and you can't stand it anymore, you do have to make that tough call. Like you did, Dad, you
Yeah.
you had to
Yep.
essentially restart the business with very limited knowledge. You went out and built relationships
Yeah.
with the right people. You have to make those tough calls.
You know what, Matty? It kind of shocked me a bit because in the wine industry, integrity is everything, and so everyone is so proud of the paddock that they own, that they grow Riesling in that paddock, and it's from this area, and that's what's great about it. That's its stamp. That's who it is. That's its DNA. We got to the meat industry, and people were selling. These guys were selling us stuff that was supposed to be Angus and yearling and MSA, and it wasn't.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of that. So yeah, we needed to be with people who had the same sort of values that we had and integrity. We don't want to sell our customers something that's not what we say it is.
yeah,
That's really important to us as well
absolutely.
and should be in any industry. But yeah, wine industry is a great barometer or example of integrity. You know, off the charts. People are proud that they grow Riesling in the Eden Valley or Shiraz in the Barossa Valley or Chardonnay in the Hunter, because that's where those grapes grow really well, and that's why you buy that wine. And meat should be the same.
That makes sense.
Unfortunately, with some people, it's not, but with us, it is.
And that same principle applies to construction, roofing, any type of trade or service, anything in business at all. You've got to do what you say, and like you mentioned, if you can over deliver, you'll always have great customers. And
Yep. Integrity is everything.
yeah,
Absolutely, no doubt in the world.
any tips? I'm going to circle back to we dug into it a bit before, but any tips on building teams and culture and things like that before we move on to the next sort of thing?
Well, the best thing is that I always found was be inclusive with people, make them feel part of if you win, make them feel part of the win. Don't ever degrade anyone in front of someone else. If you need to get up someone, you pull them aside and do it privately. That's the worst thing you can do. But just create a team environment by getting everyone together and making incentives group
Yeah,
related. That really works. And you find people, our reps used to ring one another and say, you know, I only needed to sell another 5 cartons of this or 10 cartons of this. And they work as a group to try and get the incentive because, and even if it wasn't a huge financial incentive, just the fact that their team would be mentioned at the sales meeting that they sort of won most sales for a particular product was incentive enough for them to, get in and have a go. Yeah, it's just part of being a team and giving people the responsibility. If you give them a job, you let them go and do it. And if they don't do it, then you do something about it. That works so well for us. And that came right down from the top from Robert Hill Smith and John Auld and Ralph Dunning and some of the greats of the wine industry. That was the way they built the business, and it's so successful.
For full perspective for our viewers, what was the size of the team in Queensland and Australia wide?
Ooh, I had 55 odd staff in Queensland and, about 65 in New South Wales. So, and then, the wineries and, production and all that sort of stuff. There are a lot of stuff. So, maybe 7 or 800 people.
Not small.
No, no, a big family
Yeah,
business. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. I'm going to move on to a bit of a different subject. Being a dad
Sure.
and a role model. I want to talk a little bit about that. You've had the highest of highs, the lowest of lows with being a dad. You've always been a great role model, being successful in business and family and stuff like that. But with myself, it's reasonably well known that I had some troubles in my 20s with like drugs and alcohol and addiction and things like that. And
Yep.
you helped me get through that. That sort of thing I'm seeing a lot in the industries that I help people with. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Like, what advice have you got for dads out there? How can they? What did you see work well firsthand, dealing with some of that harder, heavier stuff that a lot of people go through?
Well,
Just yeah,
we knew that you're a good person, and, that's the ingredient. That's the main ingredient. If you were a sort of a write-off and couldn't give a we knew you went off the path a bit, so to speak,
yeah,
but we knew there was a good person there, and, we knew that you'd get back on the and so we supported you right through as much as we could. We didn't, some people will run away from a
yeah,
problem. We thought we ran to it because we knew you'd come through it. There are other people that have different sort of, they might be able to come through it because they don't want to come through it.
yeah,
But we knew that you would. The ingredients are there. You're a good person, and we'd instilled good family values into you, and we knew they'd come through. And I had mates say to me, "Look, don't worry, Matthew's a good kid, and you're a good family, and he'll come through this." And that helped us through all that. And we're so proud of what you've done. You've come through that and come out the other side with flying colours. And your mother and I are so proud of you.
thanks, Dad. I'd cry, but it's not part of my brand. I'm all about drinking the tears of haters and stuff like that, but I do appreciate it.
Skulls don't cry.
But I sure do appreciate that, and I think some people will get some value out of that too, because any type of addiction or all families of all shapes, walks, and sizes go through different problems,
Yep.
and you back them as best you can. Yeah,
We've seen it with, gambling addictions, any addiction. Some people have addictive behavior and addictive
yeah,
genes, and, they get hooked on things and they just can't get off them, and, it's an illness, and you've gotta recognize that, and then try and help them get over it, and, fortunately, our family, there's been someone involved in gambling and someone involved in and both of them have come through and out the other side and are now much better people, and, so that can happen. You don't have to end up leaving society or, scraping the bottom. You would and if you've got good people around you, you can come through it,
yeah.
and you did, and we were really proud of that.
I guess for people that don't, where their families cut them off or they don't have good family, there are different support things out there in the roofing industry. There's roofers helping roofers in recovery. And there are these people out there that can help. They want to help. They've been through it themselves. So if you are
Yeah,
struggling, we, got to build that support base. You've got to want to do it too. There's no denying that.
yeah, and, everyone should try and, no matter who they are, whether you're related or not,
Yeah.
if you're a friend or, just even an acquaintance, if you can whisper something nice in someone's ear and help them get back. Every little thing helps, get them back on the path. If they're 2 foot off the path and you can put a half an inch in towards them getting back on the path, then you've helped. I've always believed in that, and I've always believed in you know treating people the way you want to be treated yourself, and I think that's worked well for me in life, and hopefully it's worked well for my children and my grandchildren.
Yeah, fantastic. Before we wrap up this little bit on addiction, I will share when you can put your addictive personality to the right thing, when you find that thing, you're very, very powerful because You've got that
Yep.
supreme focus that not many people have. And I found that with
Yep.
advertising and business and stuff like that. So yeah, just thought I'd share that.
Yep.
All
One could say that you're addicted to skulls and advertising now, which is which is not a bad thing to be addicted to.
Most definitely. On a lighter note, what's next for Jeff and Leanne Smith? What are you guys doing what are your plans and what do you want to do
Well,
in
we
life?
think we'll go through to Christmas. We wanna Jody wants to keep the business going, so she's gonna take it over, and, we're gonna retire at Christmas, and we'll still do some stuff. We'll still do the buying for her, admin and, but we won't be going to markets and doing the physical work and stuff anymore. She'll employ people to do that, and we'll start doing some traveling. We've got a few parts of the world that we haven't been to, the east coast of the US and Canada and, Scandinavia we haven't been to. We've done, all the real tourist spots like Rome and London and Paris and those sort of places. We've done them to death a little bit. So we wanna get off the beaten track and do one really good overseas trip and then do a few, trips around Australia and, or to, different places in Australia and, just enjoy our later years.
And is that something you recommend people do? Because some people like you the way you did business and life, you got to experience a lot of things along the way. Whereas some people, like you worked extremely hard, but some people all they do is work and they don't get to experience life, and then they get to the end of the journey and they might not be able to do it. Is there any advice there for people?
Well, yeah. So, we've had, Leanne and I have had probably half a dozen pretty good friends in the last 4 or 5 years, go earlier than we would have, in their early 70s or whatever. We're not that old yet, but, we're sort of getting into our 60s now, and, they missed the opportunity to they kept working and working and didn't really enjoy anything at the end of their lives. We just think we'd like to have 5 or 6 years where we just don't have to worry about, stock coming in and, staff and, waking up early and all those sorts of things you do when you've got a business. And just, waking up and looking at the surf and, just enjoying life, and, that's what we wanna do. We've seen it, people retiring too early and,
Or not
sorry,
early enough?
not early
Yeah,
enough.
yeah,
The other side of that is, we know a lot of people that have retired too early and haven't had a plan, and, they go a bit stale and get a bit bored, and,
yeah,
so it's important. It's just as important as you plan your working life to plan your retirement life, and don't waste the time
yeah.
'cause, the years just fly by, and, you gotta make the most of them, and
Yeah.
that's what we hope to do. Yep.
Fantastic. I look forward to you, I'll help you
And
put some
hopefully we'll
stories
be
up.
great babysitters too. Uh,
Yes. Yes, that would be good.
yeah.
We have another little one on the way, so that would be great, and, look forward to you sharing when that happens next year, different parts of Australia and around the world, seeing you live that sort of life. Um, Jeff Smith, my dad, you've been absolutely fantastic. You have drunk from the skulls of your enemy. Thank you very much for joining us today and sharing some of the greatest insights that we've had on the show so far. Any final words before we wrap things up?
My absolute pleasure, and I'm gonna let your mother know that you said hello. Did you say hello?
Alrighty.
All right. She loves you.
Hey, Ma.
So so do I. All right, mate.
Drink from
Thank you
skulls.
so much. That
Drink
was
from the
great. Pleasure to be
skulls
there.
of
Thanks,
my
mate.
And that's a wrap.